The office door closed with a sinister click. Olivia Jensen felt her blood run cold when Edgar Davis turned the key in the lock, the sound echoing like a final sentence. She was alone with him on the executive floor, where thick walls would muffle any scream. Edgar turned slowly, his eyes gleaming with something that went far beyond anger. It was possession, absolute control. And Olivia knew in that moment she had completely underestimated the man she'd been working for over the past 8 months. He took a step toward her, and Olivia backed away until her spine hit the cold wall. There was no way out, no one to hear her. Or at least, that's what she thought. Because 3 floors below, in a private conference room, Carl Thomas had just received a security alert on his phone that would make Edgar Davis wish he had never been born. Before we continue, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens when a mafia boss discovers someone is hurting the woman he's been secretly protecting will leave you absolutely breathless. Turn on notifications. You don't want to miss a single second of this story. Now, let's see how Olivia's nightmare turns into Edgar's worst mistake. Olivia Jensen never imagined her life in New York City would be like this. She'd arrived in Manhattan 8 months ago, fleeing a suffocating existence in a small Pennsylvania town where dreams went to die and opportunities were as rare as affordable rent. New York promised anonymity, freedom, and the chance to start over with nothing but her accounting degree and relentless determination. The job as a junior accountant at Sterling & Associates seemed perfect. A prestigious firm, competitive salary, and the kind of career trajectory she'd only imagined. The glass tower in Midtown, the corner offices, the feeling that she was finally building something that mattered. But there was a problem. And that problem had a name: Edgar Davis. Edgar was her direct supervisor, a man in his mid-40s with an expensive suit, a corner office, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. From Olivia's first day, he made it clear he was interested. It started with seemingly innocent compliments about her work, then evolved into comments about her appearance, and eventually transformed into unwanted touches. A hand on her shoulder that lingered too long, fingers grazing her lower back as he passed, standing too close when reviewing reports. Olivia tried everything: professional deflection, nervous laughter, creating physical distance whenever possible. But Edgar wasn't the type of man who accepted rejection. For him, Olivia's no was just a temporary challenge. Resistance he interpreted as a game. And the more she pulled away, the more he advanced, like a predator sensing fear and getting excited by it. The situation reached its breaking point on a Tuesday evening. Olivia was working late, finishing quarterly reports, when Edgar appeared in her cubicle. The office was nearly empty, just a handful of people scattered across different floors. He stood too close, as always, and suggested they discuss her career development in his office, privately. Every instinct screamed at Olivia not to go. But she also knew that refusing a direct request from her supervisor could cost her the job she desperately needed. The job that paid her rent, her student loans, her entire fragile existence in a city that didn't forgive weakness. So Olivia followed Edgar up to the executive floor, each step feeling like descending deeper into a trap. And when he closed that office door and turned the key with that sinister click, she knew she'd made the biggest mistake of her life. What Olivia didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that her life was already intertwined with Carl Thomas's in a way she'd never imagined. Carl was 40 years old and controlled half of Manhattan's underground economy through a complex network of legitimate businesses and shadow operations. Sterling & Associates wasn't just an accounting firm, It was one of several companies Carl owned through shell corporations, used to launder money and maintain the illusion of legitimate wealth. Edgar Davis was just an employee, a replaceable piece in the machine Carl had built over 2 decades of ruthless decisions and brutal efficiency. But 3 weeks ago, something unusual happened. Carl had stopped at a coffee shop in Midtown, a rare moment of normalcy in a life dominated by violence and strategy. And there, waiting for her order, was Olivia Jensen. She'd smiled at him, not the calculated smile people wore when they wanted something, but genuine warmth offered freely to a stranger. They'd talked for maybe 5 minutes about nothing important: the weather, the ridiculous price of coffee, the chaos of the city. But there was something about her, an integrity, a lightness, that Carl hadn't encountered in years. He'd learned her name when the barista called it: Olivia. He'd watched her leave, carrying her coffee and a leather portfolio, looking like every other young professional trying to make it in New York. Carl had thought about her more than he should have. Had his people find out where she worked? Had felt something close to shock when he discovered she was employed at one of his own companies. And because Carl Thomas didn't believe in coincidences, he'd had discreet surveillance installed in Sterling and Associates, not just for security, but to understand this woman who'd made him feel something he thought he'd lost forever: hope that goodness still existed. Now, that surveillance was about to show him something that would unleash a fury Edgar Davis could never survive. This is the story of how one locked door, one moment of violence, and one mafia boss's intervention changed everything. This is Olivia Jensen's story, and it begins with a scream no one was supposed to hear. The office door closed with a sinister click. Olivia Jensen felt her blood run cold when Edgar Davis turned the key in the lock, the metallic sound echoing in the expensive silence of the executive floor, like a final sentence being pronounced. She was alone with him. The realization hit with the force of physical blow. It was after 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Most of Sterling and Associates' staff had left hours ago. The few people still working were scattered across lower floors, buried in their cubicles, headphones on, oblivious to anything happening 3 floors above them. Edgar turned slowly from the door, and Olivia saw something in his eyes that made every hair on her body stand on end. It wasn't just desire, though that was there, twisted and hungry. It was possession, ownership, the absolute certainty that he was entitled to whatever he wanted, and right now, he wanted her. "Edgar?" Olivia said, trying to keep her voice steady, professional. "I don't think this is appropriate. The door should stay open." "Should it?" Edgar's smile didn't reach his eyes. He took a step toward her, and Olivia instinctively stepped back. "We're discussing your career development, Olivia. These conversations require privacy." Her back hit the wall, expensive mahogany paneling that probably cost more than her annual salary. There was nowhere left to go. The office was spacious, but Edgar was between her and the only exit. Olivia's mind raced through her options. Scream? The thick walls and closed door would muffle most sound, and even if someone heard, would they intervene? Edgar was a senior supervisor. She was a junior accountant who'd been here less than a year. Who would believe her? Her phone was in her purse, which was on Edgar's desk, 6 feet away, but might as well have been a mile. "Edgar, please." Olivia raised her hands, a universal gesture of peace, of boundaries. "I'm not interested. I've told you before. This needs to stop." "Stop?" Edgar's expression darkened. He took another step closer. Close enough now that she could smell his cologne, expensive, cloying, mixed with the whiskey on his breath. "You think you can tell me to stop? Do you have any idea who I am, who I'm connected to?" His hand came up, and Olivia flinched, but he didn't strike her. Instead, his fingers traced the line of her jaw, with a gentleness that was somehow more terrifying than violence would have been. "I've been patient with you," Edgar continued, his voice dropping to a whisper. "So patient, giving you time to come to your senses. But you keep pushing me away, keep refusing me like you're something special, like you have a choice." "I do have a choice," Olivia said, hating how her voice shook, "and I'm choosing to leave. Right now." She tried to move past him, tried to make a break for the door, but Edgar was faster than she expected. His hand clamped around her wrist with bruising force, yanking her back against the wall so hard that the air was knocked from her lungs. "You're not leaving," Edgar said, his face inches from hers now. "Not until I get what I want. Not until you learn your place." Olivia opened her mouth to scream, but Edgar's other hand clamped over it, muffling the sound before it could fully form. Her eyes went wide with terror as she struggled against him, but he was stronger, heavier, using his body weight to pin her against the wall. "Shh," Edgar whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "No one's going to hear you anyway. And even if they did, do you think anyone would believe you? I'm senior management, Olivia. You're a nobody. An easily replaceable junior accountant who clearly misunderstood professional mentorship." Tears began streaming down Olivia's face as Edgar's free hand moved to her throat, not squeezing, not yet, but resting there as a threat, a promise of what could happen if she didn't cooperate. This was really happening. The nightmare she'd feared for months was actually, impossibly happening. 3 floors below, in a private conference room with soundproofed walls and encrypted communication equipment, Carl Thomas felt his phone vibrate in his pocket. He was in the middle of a meeting with 2 of his financial advisors, reviewing quarterly projections for his legitimate business holdings. The Sterling and Associates accounting firm was just one piece of a much larger empire, an empire built carefully over 20 years of ruthless efficiency and strategic violence. Carl pulled out his phone, intending to silence whatever alert had triggered. But when he saw the screen, every muscle in his body went rigid. "Security alert. Unauthorized lock engagement. Executive floor. Office 3B. The message was accompanied by a live camera feed from the surveillance system Carl had installed throughout the building. The system wasn't standard corporate security. It was military-grade, designed to monitor every corner of his operations for threats, betrayals, and opportunities. And right now, it was showing him something that made Carl's carefully controlled fury ignite like gasoline touching flame. Office 3B belonged to Edgar Davis, one of the senior supervisors. And on the screen, Carl could see a woman pressed against the wall, Edgar's hand over her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. The woman was Olivia Jensen. Carl's vision tunneled. The advisors were still talking, still presenting charts and projections, but their voices faded to meaningless white noise. He knew Olivia, had known about her since the moment she'd walked into Sterling and Associates 8 months ago. Another junior accountant in a firm that employed dozens. She shouldn't have registered on his radar at all. But 3 weeks ago, Carl had stopped at a coffee shop in Midtown during a rare moment of downtime between meetings, and there, waiting for her order with patient grace, despite the lunch rush chaos, had been Olivia Jensen. She'd smiled at him, not the calculated smile people wore when they recognized power and wanted something from it, but genuine warmth offered freely to a stranger. They'd talked for perhaps 5 minutes while waiting for their orders. About nothing important: the weather, the ridiculous price of organic coffee, the unique chaos of New York, compared to wherever you came from. Olivia had mentioned she was from Pennsylvania. Carl had said he was from around. There had been something about her, a lightness, an integrity, that Carl hadn't encountered in his world he couldn't remember how long. Everyone in his life wanted something from him: power, money, protection, advancement. Their smiles were transactions, but Olivia had just been kind, had treated him like a human being, not a resource to exploit. When the barista had called her name, Carl had felt an unexpected pang of regret that the conversation was ending. She'd gathered her coffee and portfolio, wished him a good day with that same genuine smile, and left. Carl had thought about her more than he should have. Had his people find out where she worked? Had felt something close to cosmic humor when he discovered she was employed at Sterling and Associates, one of his companies, even if she didn't know it. Carl didn't believe in coincidences, didn't believe in fate, but he believed in taking care of things and people that mattered. And for reasons he couldn't fully articulate, Olivia Jensen mattered. So he'd had discreet surveillance upgraded in Sterling and Associates. Nothing invasive. He wasn't interested in watching employees work or monitoring their personal communications. But he wanted to know if anything threatened his operations, or threatened her. Now, staring at his phone screen, watching Edgar Davis assault the woman who'd made Carl remember what it felt like to want something beyond power and survival, Carl Thomas made a decision. He stood abruptly, cutting off his advisor mid-sentence. "The meeting's over," Carl said, his voice carrying a tone that made both advisors instantly stop talking. They'd worked for Carl long enough to recognize when the boss was about to do something irreversible. "Sir?" one of them ventured carefully. "The projections? I don't care about the projections." Carl was already moving toward the door, his phone still in his hand, the live feed still showing Olivia's terrified face. "Vincent!" His head of security, Vincent Walsh, appeared instantly from his position outside the conference room. Vincent had been with Carl for 15 years and could read his boss's moods with the precision of a seismograph detecting an earthquake. "Boss? Executive floor. Office 3B now." Vincent glanced at Carl's phone screen, saw what was happening, and his expression went ice cold. "Armed?" "No time. Move." They hit the emergency stairs, faster than waiting for elevators. Carl took the steps 3 at a time, Vincent keeping pace beside him. Neither man was particularly young anymore, but both maintained the kind of fitness that came from knowing physical capability could mean the difference between life and death. Carl's mind was crystal clear, running through scenarios with practiced efficiency. Edgar Davis was a mid-level supervisor Carl had never paid much attention to, competent enough at his job not to warrant scrutiny, not ambitious enough to pose a threat. Just another cog in the machine. But that cog had just made the worst mistake of his life. By the time Carl reached the executive floor, his fury had crystallized into something cold and surgical. This wasn't rage that made you sloppy. This was the controlled violence that had built an empire. He could hear muffled sounds through the heavy door of Office 3B. Olivia's frightened voice. Edgar's angry response. Carl didn't knock. He took 2 steps back, then delivered a single devastating kick just below the lock mechanism. The door didn't just open. It exploded inward, the frame splintering, the lock mechanism tearing free from the wood, with a shriek of tortured metal. Edgar Davis froze, his hand still on Olivia's face, his body still pinning her against the wall. Carl saw everything in that freeze-frame moment. Olivia's tear-stained face, the marks on her wrists where Edgar had grabbed her, the absolute terror in her eyes. Then he saw those eyes find him, recognition flickering through the fear. And Carl moved. Pause for a second. If you were in Olivia's position, what would you have done differently? Option A, never gone to the office alone with Edgar. Option B, screamed louder, hoping someone would hear. Option C, exactly what Olivia did, tried to de-escalate and wait for help. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, seriously, we're about to see what happens when a Mafia boss intervenes. Hit that button right now. Let's continue. Carl Thomas crossed the distance between the shattered door and Edgar Davis in less than 2 seconds. Edgar didn't even have time to remove his hands from Olivia before Carl grabbed him by the collar and literally tore him away from her, throwing him backward with enough force that Edgar slammed into his expensive mahogany desk. The impact made a sound like a car accident. Wood splintering, Edgar's grunt of pain and shock, the clatter of desk items flying to the floor. Olivia slid down the wall, her legs suddenly unable to support her, gasping for air now that Edgar's hand was no longer covering her mouth. Her eyes were wide, darting between Carl and Edgar, trying to process what was happening. Edgar tried to stand, his face twisted with rage and confusion. "What the fuck? Who the hell do you think?" He didn't finish the sentence. Carl's fist connected with Edgar's jaw in a precisely calculated blow that snapped the supervisor's head to the side. Blood exploded from Edgar's nose, broken in an instant, and he stumbled backward, crashing against the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked Manhattan. "Do you know who I am, Edgar?" Carl's voice was soft, conversational, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. He advanced on Edgar like a predator stalking wounded prey. Edgar was trying to speak through blood and broken teeth, his hands raised in a pathetic gesture of defense. I don't... Please, let me help you." Carl grabbed Edgar by his expensive shirt, hauled him to his feet with one hand, then slammed him back against the window hard enough to make the glass shudder. "My name is Carl Thomas. Ring any bells?" The change in Edgar's face was instantaneous. The pain, the confusion, all of it vanished, replaced by bone-deep terror. Every mid-level manager at Sterling & Associates had heard the whispered rumors. The shadow owner, the man whose name never appeared on official documents, but whose will shaped every major decision. The man connected to things you didn't talk about in polite company. "Oh, God!" Edgar choked out, blood dripping from his ruined face. "Mr. Thomas, I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Carl's voice dropped even quieter, and Olivia, still pressed against the wall, felt a chill race down her spine. "You didn't know that every person in this building is under my protection. You didn't know that when you put your hands on one of my employees, you were putting your hands on my property." The possessive language should have made Olivia angry, should have triggered her feminist instincts about not being anyone's property. But in that moment, hearing Carl claim her as something under his protection, she felt only a fierce, primal satisfaction. "Please," Edgar was begging now. "Please, I'm sorry. I'll leave. I'll resign. I'll never..." Carl hit him again, and again, methodical, controlled blows designed to hurt without killing. A broken rib, a fractured orbital bone, injuries that would take months to heal and leave scars Edgar would see every time he looked in a mirror. Vincent had appeared in the doorway, his weapon drawn but lowered. 2 more security personnel flanked him, men Olivia had never seen before but who moved with military precision. "Boss," Vincent said quietly, "we have witnesses inbound." Floor below heard the commotion. Carl delivered one final blow, a vicious strike to Edgar's solar plexus that made the supervisor collapse to his knees gasping and retching, then stepped back. His breathing wasn't even labored. This hadn't been a fight. This had been a lesson. "Get him out of my sight," Carl ordered. "Medical attention, but nothing that'll kill him. I want him alive long enough to pack his things and get the fuck out of New York." Vincent and one of the other men grabbed Edgar under the arms, hauling him to his feet. The supervisor was barely conscious, blood staining his white shirt, his face already swelling into something grotesque. As they dragged him toward the door, Carl spoke once more. "Edgar, look at me." Edgar managed to turn his head, one eye already swollen shut. "If I see you in this city again," Carl said with perfect calm, "if I hear you've contacted Olivia Jensen in any way, if you so much as think about her too loudly, I will find you. And what I just did will feel like mercy compared to what comes next. Do you understand?" Edgar nodded frantically, blood and tears mixing on his destroyed face. "Good. Get him out." They left, and suddenly the office was quiet, except for the sound of Olivia's ragged breathing. Carl turned to her, and Olivia saw the instant transformation. The cold fury that had animated him moments ago melted away, replaced by genuine concern that softened his features in a way that made him look almost vulnerable. "Olivia," he said gently, approaching slowly with his hands visible, non-threatening. "Are you hurt?" Did he do more than... Carl couldn't seem to finish the question, and Olivia realized he was asking if Edgar had raped her. "No," she managed to say, her voice hoarse. He tried to, but you stopped him before." Her words dissolved into sobs. The adrenaline that had kept her frozen during the attack was draining away, leaving only the crushing weight of trauma and terror. Carl knelt beside her, still maintaining a careful distance, not touching her without permission. "Can I help you stand? We need to get you out of here." Olivia looked at him, really looked, and felt a jolt of recognition. "The coffee shop," she whispered. 3 weeks ago. We talked about—" "Yeah," Carl's expression softened further. "I remember. But you said you didn't work here. You said—" I lied. There was no apology in his tone, just brutal honesty. "I own this firm, among other things. And after I met you, I wanted to make sure you were safe." "You've been watching me?" Carl held her gaze. "Discreetly. I had surveillance upgraded after we met. I'm not going to apologize for that, Olivia, because if I hadn't been watching, I wouldn't have known what Edgar was doing, and I wouldn't have been able to stop it." The logic was sound, but Olivia's mind was spinning too fast to fully process the implications. This man, this stranger who'd bought her coffee and talked about the weather, was apparently some kind of criminal mastermind who owned companies and commanded men with military precision. And he'd just beaten her supervisor nearly to death to protect her. I don't. Olivia couldn't form coherent thoughts. Everything was happening too fast. "Shh." Carl's voice was infinitely gentle. "You don't have to understand everything right now. Right now, we just need to get you somewhere safe. Can you stand? Can you let me help you?" Olivia looked at his extended hand. Scarred knuckles, strong fingers. The same hand that had just delivered brutal violence now offered with careful tenderness. She placed her hand in his. Carl's fingers closed around hers, warm, solid, anchoring, and he gently helped her to her feet. Olivia's legs shook, but she managed to stay upright. "That's good," Carl said encouragingly. "You're doing great. We're going to walk out of here together, okay?" Vincent cleared the floor. "No one's going to see you like this." As if summoned by his name, Vincent reappeared in the doorway. "Car's ready, boss. Side entrance clear." Carl nodded, then looked back at Olivia. "I'm going to put my arm around you to help you walk. Is that okay?" The fact that he asked, that he sought permission after what had just happened, made something in Olivia's chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't name. She nodded. Carl's arm settled around her shoulders, solid and supportive, and together they walked out of Edgar's office, leaving behind the shattered door, the broken desk, and the blood staining the expensive carpet. The hallway was empty, just as Vincent had promised. Carl guided Olivia to a service elevator she'd never even noticed before, hidden behind what looked like a maintenance panel. "Where are we going?" Olivia asked as the elevator descended. "My penthouse. It's secure, private, and has everything you'll need. You can't go back to your apartment tonight, Olivia. Edgar might have given your address to someone. We need you somewhere I can guarantee your safety." The elevator opened directly into an underground parking garage where a sleek black car waited, engine running. Vincent held the rear door open, and Carl helped Olivia inside before sliding in beside her. The interior was all leather and tinted windows, and the kind of luxury Olivia had only seen in movies. She sank into the seat, suddenly exhausted beyond anything she'd ever experienced. As the car pulled out of the garage and into the Manhattan night, Olivia's mind kept circling back to one impossible thought. Her life had just changed forever. She'd walked into that office as one person, a normal accountant with normal problems, and she was leaving as someone else entirely, someone under the protection of Carl Thomas. Someone whose world had just gotten exponentially more dangerous and complicated. But also, and this was the part that scared her almost as much as Edgar's assault, someone who felt safer in this moment, sitting beside a man who'd just committed brutal violence than she'd felt in 8 months of trying to handle Edgar's harassment alone. Carl's hand found hers in the darkness of the car, his thumb tracing gentle circles over her knuckles. "You're safe now," he murmured. "I promise. Nothing is going to hurt you again." And despite everything, despite the trauma, the fear, the complete upheaval of her reality, Olivia believed him. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of a building in Tribeca that Olivia vaguely recognized as one of the most expensive addresses in Manhattan. The private elevator opened directly into the residence. No hallway, no other apartments, just immediate immersion into Carl's world. The first thing Olivia noticed was space. Coming from her cramped studio where the bed doubled as a couch and the kitchen was barely larger than a closet, the sheer volume of Carl's penthouse was disorienting. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city. Manhattan spread out like a sea of lights against the darkness. The second thing she noticed was the security. Cameras discreetly positioned in corners. Reinforced door frames. Windows that were probably bulletproof. This wasn't just a luxury residence. It was a fortress disguised as one. "Guest room is this way," Carl said, guiding her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Olivia would earn in her lifetime. "Private bathroom, clean clothes in the closet. Might be a bit big on you, but better than—" He trailed off, his eyes taking in Olivia's torn blouse, the dirt on her skirt from where she'd slid down the wall. Olivia looked down at herself and felt a fresh wave of violation. Her clothes, her body, bore the evidence of Edgar's attack. "I'd like to shower," she said quietly. "Of course. Take all the time you need. I'll have food delivered. Are you hungry? Any dietary restrictions?" The mundane questions about food felt surreal given what had just happened, but Olivia appreciated the normalcy, Not hungry, but water would be good. I'll bring some. Carl showed her into a guest room that was larger than her entire studio apartment. The attached bathroom was all marble and chrome, with a shower that had more settings than Olivia's car. Carl lingered in the doorway, and Olivia saw genuine uncertainty in his expression. Perhaps the first time tonight he'd looked anything other than completely controlled. Olivia, I know you have questions, a lot of them, and I promise I'll answer everything truthfully. But right now, I just need to know, are you okay? Physically, I mean. Should I call a doctor? I'm not hurt, Olivia said. Then, more honestly, not physically. Carl's jaw tightened, fresh anger flickering across his features before he controlled it. I should have done worse to him. You broke his face. I should have broken more. There was a possessive fury in his tone that should have scared Olivia. Instead, she felt seen, valued, like her pain mattered enough to warrant retribution. Thank you, Olivia said quietly, for stopping him. You don't need to thank me. Carl's voice was fierce. You don't ever need to thank me for protecting you, Olivia. That's not a favor. He stopped himself, seeming to choose his next words carefully. That's just what happens now. Before Olivia could ask what he meant by now, Carl stepped back. Shower. I'll be in the living room when you're ready to talk. No pressure. Take your time. He closed the door, and Olivia was alone. The shower was scalding hot, the water pressure aggressive enough to feel almost violent. Olivia stood under the spray and let it wash away Edgar's cologne. The feel of his hands, the memory of being trapped with nowhere to run. She cried, silent, heaving sobs that she'd been holding back since the moment Carl had kicked down that door. Not just for what had almost happened tonight, but for the 8 months of harassment that had led to it. All the times she'd laughed off Edgar's comments, all the times she'd questioned whether she was overreacting, all the times she'd felt powerless and small and afraid. And now, someone had seen. Someone had believed her. Someone had done something about it with such decisive fury that Edgar Davis would probably never feel safe again. Carl Thomas, the stranger from the coffee shop who wasn't a stranger at all, who apparently owned her company, commanded men with weapons, and had been secretly watching over her for 3 weeks. Olivia should be terrified of him, should be planning her escape from this penthouse fortress, should be calling the police or a lawyer or someone official who could make sense of this impossible situation. But instead, she just felt exhausted. And strangely safe. When Olivia finally emerged from the bathroom, wrapped in a plush robe she'd found hanging on the back of the door, she discovered clean clothes laid out on the bed. Soft sweatpants, a cashmere sweater, both clearly expensive, both slightly too large for her frame. She dressed, then stood for a moment looking at her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back looked fragile. Bruises were beginning to form on her wrists where Edgar had grabbed her. Her eyes were red from crying. Her damp hair hung limp around her face. But there was something else in her expression too. Something harder than had been there before. Something that had fundamentally changed in that locked office. Olivia took a breath, then went to find Carl. He was standing by the windows in the living room, silhouetted against the Manhattan skyline, holding a glass of what looked like whiskey. He'd changed too, the suit replaced with dark jeans and a simple t-shirt that somehow made him look more dangerous, not less. Better? He asked without turning around. Cleaner. Olivia walked into the room, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. Not sure about better. Carl turned, and in the low lighting of the penthouse, Olivia got her first real look at him outside of crisis mode. He was older than she'd thought at the coffee shop, probably early 40s, though he carried it well. Dark hair with the first hints of silver at the temples, sharp features that would have been handsome if they weren't currently set in such grim lines, and eyes that had probably seen more violence and tragedy than Olivia could imagine. "Sit," Carl gestured to the expensive couch. "Please, I'll get you that water." He returned moments later with a glass of ice water and a bottle of prescription-strength ibuprofen. "For the bruises. They're going to hurt more tomorrow." Olivia took both gratefully, swallowing 2 pills while Carl settled into the armchair across from her, close enough to talk, far enough to not crowd her space. "Okay," Olivia said, setting down the water glass. "I need answers, starting with, who are you really? And don't give me the businessman line. I saw what you did to Edgar. That wasn't corporate discipline." Carl smiled slightly, and there was something appreciative in his expression. "You're direct. I liked that about you at the coffee shop, too." Carl, "Right. Answers." He took a sip of his whiskey, seemed to consider his words. "My name is Carl Thomas. I'm 40 years old. I was born in Brooklyn, grew up poor, and spent my 20s doing things I'm not proud of but won't apologize for. By the time I was 30, I'd built a network of, let's call them diverse business interests. Diverse meaning illegal. Diverse meaning operating in the gray areas between legal and illegal," Carl corrected. "I launder money through legitimate businesses. I provide protection services to people who can't go to the police. I facilitate transactions that happen outside official channels. And yes, sometimes that requires violence." The casual admission should have sent Olivia running. Instead, she found herself asking, "And Sterling and Associates?" "One of about 30 companies I own through shell corporations. Most are completely legitimate. I'm not interested in getting caught for tax evasion or fraud. Sterling makes real money, has real clients, operates by the book. It just also happens to process financial transactions for my less legal operations. So I've been working for a criminal enterprise this whole time. You've been working for a legitimate accounting firm that happens to be owned by someone with complicated revenue streams." Carl held her gaze. "Your work is completely legal, Olivia. The clients you've handled, the reports you've filed, all above board. You're not implicated in anything I do in the shadows. Except now I know about it." "Yes," Carl's expression was serious, "which is why we need to talk about what happens next." Olivia's hands tightened around the water glass. "Am I in danger?" "From me? Never. From people who might use you to get to me." Carl's hesitation told her everything. "Potentially. Edgar knowing about you, about my interest in protecting you, that's information. And information in my world is currency. He's going to tell people. He might. Which is why I gave him the option to leave New York alive. Most men take that deal. And if he doesn't?" Carl's smile was cold. "Then he doesn't leave New York at all." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Carl was talking about murder, about ending Edgar's life as casually as discussing the weather. And the truly disturbing part? Olivia didn't feel horror at the prospect. She felt satisfaction. "I'm a terrible person," Olivia whispered. "I should be horrified that you're threatening to kill him. But I'm not. I'm glad." "You're not a terrible person." Carl leaned forward, his voice intense. "You're a person who was victimized and who wants justice. The legal system isn't built for justice, Olivia. It's built for procedure. Edgar would have gotten a slap on the wrist at best, unpaid suspension, maybe forced to resign, but he would have been free to do it again to someone else. And your version of justice? Permanent. Carl held her gaze. I don't deal in half measures. When I eliminate a threat, it stays eliminated. Olivia should find that philosophy terrifying. Instead, she found it honest. Refreshing, even. No pretense that the world was fair. No illusions that playing by the rules guaranteed safety. I need to ask you something, Olivia said, and I need you to be honest. Always. The coffee shop, 3 weeks ago. Was that really a coincidence? Carl was quiet for a long moment. Then, yes and no. I stop at that particular coffee shop maybe once a month. It's on my route between 2 properties I own. Running into you was genuine chance, but, after we talked, after I learned your name, I had my people find out where you worked. And when I discovered you were at Sterling, I decided to pay more attention. Carl's expression was unapologetic. I don't believe in fate, Olivia, but I believe in taking care of things that matter. And after 5 minutes of conversation, you mattered. That's insane. You don't know anything about me. I know you're kind without being naive. I know you're strong without being hard. I know you treated a stranger with genuine warmth in a city where most people can't be bothered to make eye contact. Carl's voice softened. I've spent 20 years surrounded by people who want something from me. Power, money, protection, status. You wanted nothing. You were just good. Olivia felt tears pricking her eyes again. I'm not that good. If I was, I would have reported Edgar months ago. I would have stood up for myself sooner. You did stand up for yourself. Tonight. You told him no clearly and firmly, even knowing he had power over you. That took courage. Carl stood, walked to the windows, looked out at the city. Edgar is responsible for Edgar's actions, Olivia. Not you. Never you. The certainty in his voice was like a weight lifting off Olivia's shoulders. She realized she'd been carrying guilt. Guilt for not being strong enough, smart enough, careful enough to prevent Edgar's escalation. But Carl was right. The only person responsible for assault was the assaulter. So what happens now? Olivia asked. You said we needed to talk about what comes next. Carl turned back to face her. You have choices. I can set you up with a new identity, new city, new job. Fresh start where Edgar and anyone connected to him can't find you. Or you stay, under my protection. You continue working, not at Sterling, but I have other businesses that need someone with your skills. You live here or in a secure apartment I provide. You accept that being connected to me comes with risks, but also with resources you'd never have otherwise. You're asking me to enter your world. I'm offering you a place in it, but I won't lie about what that means. There will be danger. There will be moral compromises. You'll see things and know things that can't be unknown. And once you're fully in, getting out becomes complicated. Olivia looked around the penthouse, the luxury, the security, the implicit power. Then she thought about her studio apartment with its broken lock and noisy neighbors, her entry-level salary that barely covered rent, the constant financial anxiety that colored every decision. And she thought about Carl's hands, brutal and gentle, violent and protective, capable of destroying Edgar and holding her with infinite care in the same night. Can I have time to think about it? Olivia asked. Of course. Stay here as long as you need. No pressure, no expectations. When you're ready to decide, we'll talk. Relief flooded through Olivia. "Thank you." Carl smiled, a genuine, warm expression that transformed his face. "Get some rest. Tomorrow's going to be a lot to process." As Olivia stood to return to the guest room, Carl spoke once more. "Olivia?" She turned. "I'm glad I found you. At the coffee shop, I mean. And tonight. I'm glad I was there." "Me too," Olivia said honestly. "Even with everything else that's terrifying about this situation, I'm glad it was you." Something flickered in Carl's eyes, something that looked like hope. Then Olivia walked back to the guest room, closed the door, and lay down in the most comfortable bed she'd ever experienced. And despite everything, despite the trauma, the fear, the impossible choices ahead, she fell asleep within minutes, feeling safer than she had in months. Because somewhere in the penthouse, Carl Thomas was awake and watching over her. And somehow, that made all the difference. Okay, real talk. If a Mafia boss offered you a job after rescuing you from assault, would you take it? Part of me is like, run, girl, run. But another part is like, bestie, did you see that penthouse? That bathroom alone. If you're as conflicted as Olivia right now, smash that subscribe button so you can see what she decides. Also drop a comment. Team Stay with Carl or Team Fresh, start in a new city. Let me know your vote. Now, let's see what happens next. Olivia woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and spent several disorienting seconds trying to remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. Edgar's office, Carl's intervention, the penthouse, the impossible choice. She checked her phone, 8:47 a.m. and 37 missed calls. 12 from Sterling and Associates HR, 10 from a number she didn't recognize, 15 from her friend and former roommate, Jade. Olivia ignored the first two and called Jade back. "Oh my God, where are you?" Jade's voice was frantic. "I've been calling for hours. Did you see the news about Edgar Davis?" "What news?" "He's in the hospital. Someone beat the absolute shit out of him last night in his office at Sterling. His face is destroyed, Liv. 3 broken ribs, fractured orbital bone. Whoever did it wanted him to suffer. And there are rumors." Jade lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Rumors that it was connected to, like, organized crime or something. People are saying Edgar pissed off the wrong person. That maybe he was into something shady. Liv, you worked with him. Do you know anything?" Olivia's mind raced. The official story was already forming. Edgar as the victim of criminal violence, not the perpetrator who'd gotten what he deserved. "I don't know anything," Olivia lied. "I left early last night. Wasn't even there when it happened." "Well, thank God for that. This whole thing is crazy. Sterling's on lockdown, police everywhere, interviews, the whole 9 yards. HR is telling everyone to work from home until further notice." "Jade, I have to go. I'll call you back later, okay?" Olivia ended the call before her friend could ask more questions, then sat staring at her phone. The police would want to talk to her eventually, would want to know about Edgar's behavior, about whether she'd witnessed anything. What was she supposed to say? That her supervisor had assaulted her and a mysterious stranger had intervened? Or would Carl's version of events be different? Would there be an official story she was expected to support? There was a soft knock at the door. "Come in," Olivia called. Carl entered carrying a tray with coffee, toast, and what looked like an elaborate fruit arrangement. He was back in business casual. Dark slacks, crisp white shirt, looking every inch the successful businessman rather than the violent protector from last night. "Morning," he said, setting the tray on the dresser. "I wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a variety. Coffee's Brazilian dark roast. If you prefer something else..." I can— Carl. Olivia interrupted his nervous rambling, and the fact that he was nervous was oddly endearing. Thank you, but we need to talk about what story I'm supposed to tell. Carl's expression shifted to something more serious. He sat in the armchair by the window, gestured for Olivia to take the coffee if she wanted. The official story, Carl said, is that Edgar Davis was assaulted by unknown individuals in his office last night around 8:30 p.m. No witnesses. Security cameras mysteriously malfunctioned during the relevant time frame. Edgar claims he doesn't remember who attacked him, head trauma causing selective amnesia. He's lying. Of course he's lying. But he's also not going to tell the truth, because the truth involves admitting he assaulted a subordinate, which opens him up to criminal charges and civil lawsuits. So Edgar will take the beating, accept the medical bills I'm anonymously covering, and keep his mouth shut. And me? You left Sterling at 6 p.m., well before the incident. You have time-stamped subway records showing you took the train downtown. You spent the evening at home, alone, unfortunately with no alibi, but also no reason for police to suspect your involvement. Carl held her gaze. The only way you get pulled into this is if you choose to come forward about Edgar's harassment, which is entirely your decision, Olivia. If you want to file a report, I'll support you. But I want you to understand what that means. Tell me. It means your name gets attached to this permanently. It means media attention. Sterling is a big enough firm that assault of a senior executive will be news. It means lawyers, depositions, cross-examination. It means Edgar's defense team will dig into every aspect of your life, looking for ammunition. And it means potentially connecting you to me, which puts a target on your back. Olivia absorbed this. The practical part of her brain, the part that had gotten her through college on scholarships and into a competitive job market, understood the calculation. Coming forward would be emotionally satisfying, but strategically disastrous. I stay quiet, she said. That's probably safest. But again, your choice. No, you're right. Speaking up doesn't change what happened. It just makes me vulnerable. Olivia took a sip of coffee. It was excellent, perfectly brewed. Is this what your world is like? Everything calculated? Every choice is measured against risk? Yes, Carl said simply. It has to be. Emotion is a luxury I can't afford most of the time. But last night, you were emotional. When you saw what Edgar was doing, you were furious. Something flickered across Carl's face. You're the exception to a lot of my rules, Olivia. The weight of that statement hung in the air between them. Before Olivia could respond, Carl's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. I have to take this. Will you be okay for a bit? I'm fine. Go. Carl stepped into the hallway, and Olivia heard the low murmur of his voice, too quiet to make out words, but the tone was all business. She took advantage of the privacy to really look around the guest room. Everything was expensive, but not ostentatious. Comfortable without being cluttered. It felt like a space designed for functionality first, luxury second. Kind of like Carl himself. When he returned 10 minutes later, his expression was grim. Edgar checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice. My people have eyes on him, but he's not heading to the airport like I expected. He's going somewhere else. You think he's going to come after me? I think he's too smart for that. But Edgar's unpredictable when he's emotional. Might do something stupid. Carl's jaw tightened. I'm doubling your security until we know his location. Carl, I can't live like this. Constantly looking over my shoulder. It's temporary. Until Edgar's either out of the city or… Carl didn't finish the sentence, but Olivia understood, or permanently dealt with. "You said you'd give me time to decide," Olivia said, "about staying or leaving. But it doesn't feel like I have much choice if I'm in danger." "You always have a choice." Carl's voice was firm. "If you want to disappear, I'll make it happen. New identity, relocation, enough money to start over. You'll be completely disconnected from me and everything that comes with that." "And if I stay?" Carl looked at her with an intensity that made Olivia's breath catch. "If you stay, you're under my protection permanently, which means I teach you how to survive in this world. You learn how my businesses work, the legal and the less legal. You get trained in security protocols, self-defense, situational awareness, and you become part of my circle. Your circle. People I trust, people who know the truth about what I do and choose to stay anyway." Carl paused. "It's a small circle, Olivia, by necessity. But it's also the safest place you could possibly be." Olivia thought about her old life, the cramped apartment, the suffocating job with Edgar's constant harassment, the grinding financial anxiety. Then she thought about this penthouse, about the resources Carl commanded, about the power he wielded, and she thought about how, in one night, Carl had made her feel more protected and valued than anyone had in years. "Teach me," Olivia said. Carl's expression shifted, surprise, then something that looked almost like relief. "You're sure?" "No, but I'm sure I don't want to spend the rest of my life running and hiding. If I'm going to be in danger because of what Edgar did, I want to be dangerous right back." A slow smile spread across Carl's face. "All right then, welcome to my world, Olivia Jensen. Let's get started." The next few weeks were a blur of education and transformation. Carl was true to his word. He taught Olivia everything. She learned that his empire wasn't just criminal. It was a complex hybrid of legitimate businesses, restaurants, hotels, accounting firms like Sterling, and shadow operations, money laundering, protection services, facilitation of illegal transactions. She learned the key players: Vincent Walsh, the security chief who'd been with Carl for 15 years; Sophie Laurent, the lawyer who specialized in keeping Carl's legal businesses pristine and his illegal ones invisible; Derek Patel, the financial wizard who moved money through international markets with the skill of a concert pianist. She learned the rules: loyalty above all, discretion always, violence only when necessary, but then absolute and final. And she learned Carl himself. He was up by 5 a.m. every day, working out in the penthouse's private gym with an intensity that spoke of discipline bordering on obsession. He read constantly, not just business reports, but history, philosophy, classic literature. He spoke 3 languages fluently. He remembered everyone's names, their families, their birthdays. He was brutal in business, but fair. He never asked his people to do anything he wouldn't do himself. And he protected his own with a ferocity that would have been terrifying if Olivia hadn't been one of the protected. They spent hours together each day, reviewing finances, discussing strategy, eating meals that Carl insisted on making himself because restaurants can be compromised. And through it all, Olivia felt herself changing. She started dressing differently. More expensive clothes that Carl insisted on providing, not as gifts, but as operational necessities. She learned to move through spaces with awareness, always knowing her exits. She took self-defense classes with an instructor Carl hired, learning to fight dirty and escape holds. She also started sleeping better. The nightmares about Edgar faded. In their place came dreams of possibility, of power, of being someone who couldn't be victimized again. And she started noticing the way Carl looked at her, the way his eyes tracked her movements across a room, the way he found excuses to stand close when reviewing documents, the way his voice softened when he said her name. She noticed because she was looking at him the same way. 4 weeks after the attack, Olivia was in Carl's office reviewing real estate holdings when Vincent entered with an urgent expression. "Boss, we've got a problem." Carl looked up from his laptop. "Edgar? Edgar. He's not leaving town. In fact, he just met with someone very interesting." Vincent pulled out his phone, showed them a photograph. Olivia squinted at the grainy surveillance image. 2 men in a coffee shop. One was Edgar, his face still showing faint bruises. The other was... "Is that Dmitry Volkov?" Carl's voice went dangerously quiet. "In the flesh. They met for an hour. Very cozy." Olivia looked between them. "Who's Dmitry Volkov?" Carl's expression was grim. "Remember when I said I have rivals? People who'd like to take what I've built? Dmitry Volkov runs the primary competing organization. We have an understanding. We stay out of each other's way. Don't poach each other's territory. But Dmitry's been looking for weaknesses, ways to expand without triggering open war." "And Edgar just gave him one," Vincent finished. "Edgar knows about you, Olivia, knows Carl cares about protecting you. That makes you a vulnerability, a pressure point." Olivia felt ice form in her stomach. "They're going to come after me." "Yes," Carl said flatly, "which means we need to move you. Permanently. This penthouse is secure, but if Volkov's targeting you, we need— No." Both men looked at her. "No," Carl repeated. "No," Olivia said firmly. "I'm not running. I'm not hiding. You said you'd teach me how to survive in this world. So teach me how to handle this." Carl stood, walked around the desk until he was directly in front of Olivia. "This isn't a theoretical lesson anymore. Volkov will send people. Professionals. They will hurt you to hurt me. Then make sure they don't succeed." Olivia held his gaze. "I chose to stay, Carl. I chose this. So stop treating me like I need to be wrapped in cotton and locked away. Treat me like I'm part of your team." Vincent made a sound that might have been approval. Carl stared at Olivia for a long moment, then slowly smiled. "All right. Vincent, bump her security detail to level 3. Start tactical training tomorrow. Weapons, evasion, counter-surveillance. And get Sophie to draw up power of attorney documents. If something happens to me, Olivia needs legal authority over my assets." "Boss," Vincent started. "Do it! If Volkov wants to make this personal, we'll show him exactly how personal it can get." As Vincent left to execute orders, Carl turned back to Olivia. "You're sure about this?" "I'm terrified," Olivia admitted. "But I'm also tired of being afraid. Tired of being the victim. You gave me a chance to be something else. I'm taking it." Carl's hand came up, cupping her face with unexpected tenderness. "You're extraordinary. Do you know that?" Olivia's breath caught. They were standing so close now, close enough that she could feel the heat of his body, could see the gold flecks in his eyes. "Carl." "I'm going to kiss you now," Carl said quietly. "Unless you tell me not to." Olivia didn't tell him not to. The kiss was gentle at first, surprisingly so, given Carl's capacity for violence. But then, Olivia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the gentleness transformed into something fierce and desperate and inevitable. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard. Carl rested his forehead against hers. "This complicates things," he murmured. "Everything about this is already complicated," Olivia replied. "What's one more complication?" Carl laughed, a real, genuine sound of joy that Olivia had never heard from him before. "All right then, let's handle this together." Together, Olivia thought. She liked the sound of that. But she had no idea just how soon that word would be tested. Because across town, Edgar Davis and Dmitry Volkov were finalizing a plan that would push Olivia and Carl to their absolute limits. And one way or another, everything was about to come to a head. Quick poll? Is Olivia being brave or reckless by choosing to stay and learn Carl's world instead of disappearing? Option A. Brave. She's taking control of her life. Option B. Reckless. Girl, these are literal mobsters. Option C. Both. Calculated risk with high reward. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, you better hit that button because the next chapter gets intense. Let's continue. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of Olivia's life. She woke at 5 a.m. with Carl for brutal physical training. Not the casual gym sessions she'd done before, but tactical conditioning designed to build strength, speed, and endurance under pressure. Her muscles screamed. Her hands blistered. But she kept going. She spent afternoons at a private shooting range Vincent had secured, learning to handle firearms with an instructor who'd served 20 years in military special operations. The first time she'd held a gun, her hands had shaken so badly the instructor had gently removed it from her grip. By the second week, she could field strip a Glock 19 blindfolded and hit center mass at 25 yards. She learned counter-surveillance, how to spot a tail, how to use reflections in windows and storefronts to track people following her, how to vary her routes and timing so patterns couldn't be established. She learned escape and evasion, how to slip flex cuffs, how to break common holds, where to strike to maximize injury and create openings. And through it all, Carl was there, encouraging, demanding, never accepting anything less than her absolute best effort. "Again," he'd say when she missed a shot. "You don't get second chances in the real world. Again." "Faster," he'd say when she practiced disarming techniques. "Your attacker won't wait for you to remember the steps. Faster." "Think," he'd say when reviewing surveillance footage, pointing out details she'd missed. "What's wrong with this picture? What doesn't belong?" It was exhausting and empowering in equal measure. But the training wasn't just physical and tactical. Carl also taught Olivia the business, the real business. He showed her how money moved through his empire, legitimate revenue from restaurants and hotels mixing with cash from protection services and facilitation fees. How transactions were structured to avoid detection. How shell companies and offshore accounts created layers of separation between Carl and his illegal operations. "The key," Carl explained one evening as they reviewed financial statements, "is that everything has to make sense independently. Each restaurant actually serves food and makes profit. Each hotel actually books rooms and pays taxes. The illegal revenue is a supplement, not the foundation." "But doesn't that mean you're vulnerable?" Olivia asked. "If authorities freeze your legitimate assets, then I have contingencies, properties held in other names, cash reserves in secure locations, relationships with people who owe me favors." Carl's smile was cold. "I've been building this for 20 years, Olivia. Every vulnerability has been considered and addressed." It was during these sessions, late nights with Chinese takeout and spreadsheets, that Olivia truly fell for Carl Thomas. Not for his power or his protection, though those were certainly attractive, but for his mind, for the way he saw 15 moves ahead in any situation, for the fierce loyalty he showed his people, for the unexpected vulnerability he showed only to her. One night, after a particularly difficult training session where Olivia had finally managed to successfully defend against Vincent's full-strength attack simulation, Carl opened a bottle of expensive wine and they sat on the penthouse terrace overlooking the city. "Do you ever regret it?" Olivia asked. "This life? The choices that led you here?" Carl was quiet for a long moment, swirling wine in his glass. "I regret the people I've hurt, who didn't deserve it. The mistakes I made when I was younger and angrier. But the life itself?" He shook his head. "This is who I am, Olivia. I'm not a good man playing at being bad. I'm a bad man who's managed to maintain some principles. You're not bad. I've killed people, ordered deaths, profited from human weakness and desperation." Carl turned to look at her. "Just because I protect you doesn't make me good. You stopped Edgar. You gave me a choice when you could have just made decisions for me. You care about your people. I've seen it. Vincent's daughter's college tuition, that medical treatment you arranged for Sophie's mother, the bonuses you give employees at your restaurants so they can actually live in this city." Olivia shook her head. "Bad men don't do those things." "Complicated men do those things," Carl corrected. "I can be protective and ruthless, generous and brutal. It's not about good or bad. It's about survival and loyalty." Olivia moved closer until she was sitting right beside him on the terrace couch. "Then I choose complicated. I choose the man who's both things." Carl set down his wine glass and pulled her into his arms. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped together under the Manhattan stars, both aware that the peace couldn't last, but unwilling to break the moment. The call came 3 days later. Olivia was in the penthouse gym, working through her morning cardio routine, when Vincent burst in with an expression that made her immediately stop the treadmill. "Carl needs you in his office, now." She followed Vincent down the hallway, her heart pounding. Carl was behind his desk, his phone in one hand, his expression absolutely murderous. When he saw Olivia, some of the fury in his eyes softened, but only slightly. "What happened?" she asked. Edgar made his move. Carl set down his phone with deliberate care, as if afraid he'd crush it otherwise. "Volkov's people grabbed one of my mid-level operators 2 hours ago. They're holding him in a warehouse on the docks. Sent a video." He turned his laptop around so Olivia could see the screen. The video showed a man Olivia vaguely recognized, Derek something, one of the restaurant managers, bound to a chair, his face bloodied. A masked figure stood behind him. Then Edgar stepped into frame, his face still showing faint marks from Carl's beating weeks ago. "Hello, Carl," Edgar said to the camera, his voice dripping with malice. "Remember me? Thought you could put your hands on me and walk away? Thought you could ruin my life and face no consequences? Well, here's how this is going to work. You give me Olivia Jensen. You deliver her personally to the address I'm about to send you. You do it alone, unarmed, within the next 6 hours. Or your man here dies. And then we start working our way through your organization until you have nothing left." Edgar leaned closer to the camera. "I know you care about her, Carl. Everyone knows. You made it very public when you beat me half to death over her. So now, she's the price. 6 hours, come alone, or watch everything you've built burn." The video ended. Olivia felt like she'd been punched. "He's using me as bait." "Yeah." Karl's voice was ice. "He's using you to draw me out. And then Volkov's people will kill us both and make a play for my territory. So we don't go. If we don't go, Derek dies. And they'll just grab someone else. And someone else. Until I either comply or start an outright war with the Volkov organization." Karl stood, began pacing. "This is textbook. Apply pressure to force a mistake. Make me choose between my people and my—" He stopped, looked at Olivia. "Between my people and you. Then we turn the tables." Olivia's mind was racing, all the tactical training suddenly clicking into place. They expect you to be emotional, to rush in without thinking because they have me as leverage, so we don't do what they expect. Vincent made an approving sound. "I like where this is going." "What are you thinking?" Karl asked. "You do go to the exchange, but not alone. You bring your team, hidden, positioned before you arrive. When Edgar and Volkov's people reveal themselves, you have them surrounded." "They'll be expecting that," Vincent said. "Standard trap and counter-trap scenario." "So we add a third layer." Olivia turned to Karl. "You send me, but not as a victim. As bait, they can't resist." "Absolutely not," Karl said immediately. "Listen to me. If I show up, apparently cooperating, Edgar will gloat. He'll want to humiliate you through me. That gives you time to position your people. And if things go bad—" Olivia met Karl's eyes steadily. "I know how to shoot now. I know how to fight. I'm not helpless anymore." "You're also not a trained operative," Karl argued. "Olivia, I can't risk you like this. You can't risk Derek either, or any of your other people. But you also can't afford to look weak by refusing Edgar's demands." Olivia moved closer. "Let me do this. Let me prove I'm not just someone you have to protect. Let me be part of the solution." Karl looked at Vincent, who spread his hands. "She's not wrong about the strategy, boss. If we play this smart, we can turn their trap into ours." For a long moment, Karl said nothing, his jaw working as he processed. Then, "Fine, but we do this my way. Full tactical team, surveillance, weapons, and if anything goes sideways, you get out. No heroics, no trying to prove anything. You survive. That's the only acceptable outcome." "Deal," Olivia said. "Then let's plan a counter-ambush," Karl said grimly. "Vincent, get everyone in here. We have 6 hours to execute this perfectly." As Vincent moved to make calls, Karl pulled Olivia aside. "If something happens to me," he said quietly, "everything's yours. Sophie has the paperwork. Vincent and the team know to follow your orders. You'll have resources to disappear or to run the operation. Your choice. Nothing's going to happen to you." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Olivia grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. "Because I'm not losing you, Karl Thomas. Not after finally finding someone who sees me as more than a victim or an asset. So we both survive this. Together, understand?" Karl's expression softened. He kissed her, hard and desperate, then pulled back. "Together," he agreed. They had 5 hours and 42 minutes to make that promise a reality. The address Edgar had sent led to an abandoned warehouse in Red Hook, Brooklyn, a maze of rusted metal and broken windows that had once processed shipping containers but now served as a graveyard for urban decay. Perfect location for an ambush. Olivia sat in the back of Karl's car, dressed in the same clothes she'd been wearing that night in Edgar's office, a deliberate choice designed to remind Edgar of his victory. Her hands were steady despite the adrenaline flooding her system. Under her loose jacket, she wore a bulletproof vest. Secured in an ankle holster was a compact Glock 43, small enough to conceal, powerful enough to be lethal. She'd practiced drawing it 100 times under Vincent's watchful eye. Now, she just had to hope she wouldn't need it. Carl sat beside her, his expression unreadable. "Last chance to change your mind." "Not a chance." Vincent, driving, glanced in the rear-view mirror. "Teams in position. We've got Overwatch on the roof, Wilson and Torres. Perimeter secured by Lopez and Hernandez. Entry team standing by 3 blocks out. You're covered from every angle. Weapons? Clean ones. If this goes loud, nothing traces back to us." Vincent pulled the car to a stop 2 blocks from the warehouse. "Radio check." Olivia touched the nearly invisible earpiece concealed by her hair. "Check." "Loud and clear, Miss Jensen," came Wilson's voice from the rooftop position. "We've got visual on the warehouse. Count 6 hostiles outside, likely more inside. Derek is visible through the second-floor windows, alive, conscious." "Good." Carl looked at Olivia. "Remember the plan. You walk in, act compliant, but not broken. Engage Edgar in conversation. The longer he talks, the more time we have to identify all his people. When I give the signal, I drop and you end this," Olivia finished. "I know. We've been over it 12 times. Let's make it 13. But Carl smiled slightly. "I love you. You know that, right?" It was the first time he'd said it explicitly. Olivia felt her throat tighten. "I love you too, which is why we're both walking out of this." They exited the car together. Carl handed Olivia a phone, a burner, pre-programmed with 1 number. "If you need immediate extraction, hit call. We'll come in loud." Then he kissed her 1 more time, and Olivia began walking toward the warehouse alone. Every step felt like a mile. The warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows like empty eye sockets watching her approach. Olivia forced herself to breathe steadily, to project vulnerability, while staying alert. 2 men in dark clothing emerged from the shadows as she approached. "Hands up. You armed?" "No," Olivia lied smoothly, raising her hands. One of them patted her down, professional but not thorough enough to find the ankle holster. Amateur mistake. Vincent would have found it immediately. "She's clean. Boss, we've got her." They escorted Olivia into the warehouse. The interior was a nightmare of exposed metal beams, pools of standing water, and shadows that could hide anything. Emergency lights provided just enough illumination to navigate, but not enough to see clearly. Edgar was waiting on the second-floor catwalk, Derek bound to a chair beside him. 6 more men with weapons were positioned around the space, and standing slightly behind Edgar, wearing an expensive suit that looked absurd in the industrial decay, was a man Olivia recognized from surveillance photos. Dmitry Volkov. "Olivia Jensen," Edgar called down, his voice echoing. "The woman who ruined my life. How kind of you to join us." "Let Derek go," Olivia said, keeping her voice steady. "That was the deal. The deal was that Carl Thomas brings you personally, alone and unarmed." Edgar looked around theatrically. "Where is he? Or did the great Carl send his girlfriend to handle his business?" In Olivia's ear, Carl's voice came through crystal clear. "Entering from the south entrance. Keep him talking." "Carl's coming," Olivia said. "But I wanted to talk to you first, Edgar. Wanted to understand why you're doing this." "Which?" Edgar laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "You really have to ask? You destroyed my career. Your boyfriend destroyed my face. I lost everything because you couldn't just accept a little attention. A little attention? Olivia felt anger cutting through her fear. You assaulted me, locked me in your office, and put your hands on me. That's not attention, Edgar. That's violence. I gave you opportunities. Edgar was descending the stairs now, his men moving with him. I could have advanced your career, could have made you someone important. But you rejected me, humiliated me, made me look weak. You made yourself weak, a new voice said. Carl stepped out of the shadows at the far end of the warehouse, hands raised to show he was unarmed. His eyes found Olivia immediately, a silent question. You okay? She nodded fractionally. Carl Thomas, Dmitry Volkov said, his Russian accent evident. Finally, I was beginning to think you wouldn't show. I'm here. Let my people go. Oh, I don't think so. Dmitry smiled. See, this is about more than just Edgar's petty revenge. This is about sending a message. You've been king of this city for too long, Carl. Time for new management. In Olivia's ear, we've got a problem. 3 more vehicles just arrived. At least 12 additional hostiles. This is bigger than we thought. Carl's expression didn't change, but Olivia saw the slight tension in his shoulders. They were outnumbered more severely than anticipated. So, what's the play here, Dmitry? Carl asked calmly. You kill us both? Start a war with my organization? War implies 2 equal sides. Dmitry gestured to his men. With you dead and your key people eliminated, your empire falls apart. I absorb what's valuable. The rest disappears. You've underestimated me before, Carl said. How did that work out? This time is different. This time, I have leverage. Dmitry nodded to Edgar. Kill the girl. Everything happened at once. Edgar pulled a gun from inside his jacket, aiming at Olivia. Carl shouted, Now! And dropped to the ground. Olivia's training took over. She pivoted, dropped into a crouch, her hand going to the ankle holster and coming up with the Glock in one smooth motion. The warehouse exploded with sound. Carl's team breached from multiple entry points, flash bangs detonating, smoke filling the space, shouted commands in Russian and English colliding in the chaos. Olivia fired twice at Edgar. The first shot went wide. She'd forgotten to account for the recoil in the moment of panic. The second hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Then someone grabbed her from behind, and Olivia twisted, executing the escape maneuver Vincent had drilled into her muscle memory. Elbow to the ribs, heel stomp to the instep, duck and spin away. She came up with the gun still in her hand, found herself face to face with one of Dmitry's men, and didn't hesitate. She squeezed the trigger, center mass, just like on the range. The man went down. Olivia had just killed someone. She expected to feel horror, revulsion, something. Instead, she just felt focused. More gunfire, shouting. The warehouse had become a war zone. Olivia! Carl's voice, close now. His hand found hers in the smoke. Are you hit? No, I'm okay. Derek, Vincent's got him. We need to move. Now! They ran through the chaos, Carl's body shielding Olivia, his people forming a protective corridor. They made it outside to where the cars waited, engines running. Wait, Olivia said. Edgar? Volkov. Did we? Team 2 has Volkov pinned. Edgar ran. We'll find him. Vincent was already pulling the car away from the warehouse. But we need to clear the area before NYPD shows up. As they sped through Brooklyn streets, Olivia's hands started shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, reality setting in. She'd killed someone, shot a man who was trying to kill her, and hadn't hesitated. Carl pulled her against his chest. "Breathe, just breathe. You did what you had to do. You survived." "I killed him." "He would have killed you." Carl's voice was firm. "You defended yourself. That's not murder, Olivia. That's survival." But Olivia wasn't sure she knew the difference anymore. Back at the penthouse 2 hours later, after debriefs and weapon disposals, and ensuring everyone on Carl's team had made it out safely, Olivia stood in the shower, letting scalding water wash away gun smoke and blood that wasn't hers. She'd crossed a line tonight. Had become something she never thought she'd be. A killer. Someone who could take a life and keep functioning. When she finally emerged, Carl was waiting in the bedroom. He'd showered in another bathroom, changed into clean clothes, but his eyes still carried the weight of the night's violence. "How are you?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "I keep thinking I should feel worse than I do. Shouldn't I feel worse?" Guilt and trauma don't work on a schedule. Carl patted the bed beside him. "When I killed my first person, 21 years old, defending my territory, I threw up for an hour afterward. I couldn't eat for 2 days. Thought I'd never feel clean again. And eventually I accepted that survival in my world sometimes requires violence. That protecting the people I love means making choices others would call evil." He looked at Olivia. "But it changes you. Every life you take, every line you cross, you don't get to stay innocent." "I don't feel innocent," Olivia said. "I feel powerful. Is that wrong?" Carl was quiet for a moment. "No, it's honest. You faced a life-or-death situation, and you won. That's power. The question is what you do with it." Olivia crawled into bed beside Carl, and he wrapped his arms around her immediately. "Edgar got away," she said into the darkness. "For now, but we'll find him. And when we do—" "I want to be there," Olivia interrupted. "When you end this, I want to be there." Carl's arms tightened around her. "Are you sure?" "He tried to rape me. Then he tried to kill me. Yes, I'm sure." "All right," Carl said softly. "Then we end it together." They fell asleep like that, wrapped together, two people forever changed by violence and choice, bound by something deeper than love, by shared survival and the understanding that they'd both crossed lines that could never be uncrossed. So let me get this straight. Olivia went from crying in a locked office to shooting people in a warehouse in like 6 weeks? Character development of the century. If you're as shook as I am right now, you better be subscribed because we've got one more chapter, and Edgar is still out there planning his revenge. Hit that button. Drop a comment. Is Olivia a badass, or is this situation completely unhinged? Both answers are valid. Let's finish this story. Edgar Davis survived 4 more days. Carl's network was vast and efficient. Within 48 hours, they'd tracked Edgar to a seedy motel in Newark, then to a safe house in Pennsylvania, then finally to an apartment in Hoboken owned by a distant cousin. Edgar thought he was being smart, using family connections Carl wouldn't immediately identify. But Carl's people had been tracking the Davis family tree from the moment Edgar became a threat. Every relative, every friend, every person Edgar had ever been close to was now under surveillance. "We've got him," Vincent reported on the morning of the 5th day. "Apartment 4C. He's alone. Looks like he's planning to make a run for it. Packed bags, bought a bus ticket to Virginia under a fake name." Carl looked at Olivia. "You still want to be there for this?" "Yes. It's going to be ugly. No arrest, no police, just an ending. I understand. They drove to Hoboken that afternoon. Carl, Olivia, and Vincent in one car, 2 more vehicles with additional security following at a distance. The apartment building was standard Jersey low-income housing. Cracked concrete, peeling paint, the smell of desperation and broken dreams. Edgar had fallen far from the Sterling and Associates executive floor. "He's alone," Vincent confirmed via radio. "No lookouts, no security. Either he's really confident or really stupid." "Stupid," Carl said. "He thinks geographic distance equals safety." They approached the apartment building through a service entrance. Vincent had already disabled the security cameras. This would leave no electronic trail. Carl knocked on the door of 4C. Silence. Then shuffling footsteps. "Who is it?" Edgar's voice muffled by the door. "Delivery," Carl said, his voice pitched different from normal. The door opened a crack. Security chain still attached, and Edgar's eye appeared in the gap, then widened in recognition and terror. He tried to slam the door. Carl kicked it open, the security chain ripping free from the frame with a screech of tortured metal. Edgar stumbled backward into the apartment, and Carl advanced with the inevitability of a glacier. Olivia followed, Vincent behind her, closing the door to contain the situation. The apartment was squalid, unmade bed, empty takeout containers, the smell of fierce sweat and stale coffee. Edgar backed against the far wall, his hands raised in futile defense. "Please," he gasped, "please. I'll leave the country. I'll never come back. You had that option weeks ago," Carl said coldly. "I gave you mercy once. You chose to throw it away by allying with Volkov. By trying to kill Olivia. She ruined my life. You ruined your own life by being a predator." Carl glanced back at Olivia. "You want to say anything to him before this ends?" Olivia stepped forward until she was close enough to see the broken blood vessels in Edgar's eyes, the tremor in his hands. "I want you to know something," she said quietly. "You didn't break me. You tried. You locked me in that office, and you put your hands on me, and you thought you could make me small and afraid. But you failed, because I'm still here. I'm stronger than I was, more powerful. And she smiled coldly. "You're nothing." Edgar's face twisted with rage. "You think you're better than me? You're fucking a gangster. You're a criminal now, too." "Yes," Olivia agreed. "I am, but I chose this. I chose power over victimhood." "What did you choose?" "Edgar, you chose to be a predator, and predators eventually meet something higher on the food chain." She stepped back, nodding to Carl. "Make it quick," she said. "He doesn't deserve to suffer. He deserves to just stop existing." Carl nodded, turned to Edgar. What happened next took less than 30 seconds. Olivia didn't look away, felt she owed it to herself to witness this, to see the moment the man who'd terrorized her stopped being a threat. When it was done, Vincent was already on his phone, calling the cleanup crew. Body disposal, full sanitization, standard protocols. They left the apartment building the same way they'd entered, unseen, unrecorded. 3 blocks away, they stopped at a small park where Carl had left a different car. "How do you feel?" Carl asked Olivia as they sat on a bench overlooking the Hudson. "I thought I'd feel guilty," Olivia admitted, "or traumatized, but I just feel done, like a chapter closing." "It's not always that clean." "I know, but for this, for Edgar?" She shook her head. He made choices that led him here. I'm not going to carry guilt for his consequences." Carl took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "You've changed so much since that night. Sometimes I look at you and wonder if I made you into something you were never meant to be." "You didn't make me into anything." Olivia squeezed his hand. "You gave me choices. You showed me I could be more than just someone things happened to. The rest? That was me deciding who I wanted to be." "And who's that?" Olivia thought about it. 6 weeks ago, she'd been a junior accountant who took shit from a predatory supervisor because she needed the paycheck. Now she was, what, a criminal? A killer? Carl Thomas's partner in both business and violence? "I'm someone who survived," she said finally. "Someone who chose power over safety. Someone who will never be a victim again because I learned how to fight back." She looked at Carl. "Is that enough?" "It's everything," Carl said softly. They sat together in the park as afternoon faded to evening, the Manhattan skyline glowing across the water, and Olivia felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not because the danger was gone. She knew Carl's world would always be dangerous, but because she was dangerous too now. And somehow, that made all the difference. 6 months after Edgar Davis's death, Olivia Jensen walked into a high-level business meeting at one of Carl's upscale hotels wearing a designer suit that cost more than her old monthly rent and carrying a leather portfolio that contained both legitimate financial reports and encrypted information about less legal operations. The men around the table, Carl's lieutenants, business partners, and key operators, stood when she entered. Not because Carl ordered them to, but because Olivia had earned that respect through 6 months of proving she was exactly as capable, strategic, and ruthless as Carl had always said she could be. "Gentlemen," Olivia said, taking her seat at Carl's right hand. "Let's begin." The meeting covered territory disputes with a rival organization, money laundering efficiency improvements, and expansion opportunities into Atlantic City. Olivia contributed to all 3 discussions, her insights sharp and her recommendations practical. When someone questioned her strategy for the Atlantic City play, Olivia didn't hesitate. The Jersey operation doesn't respect outsiders. We need local partnership. I've already reached out to the Marino family. They control the boardwalk. We provide capital and political connections. They provide boots on the ground. Revenue split 60-40, our favor. The Marinos wanted 50-50 last time we discussed this, Vincent pointed out. Olivia smiled slightly. Last time they were negotiating with you. I spoke with Angie Marino directly, woman to woman. She understands the value proposition differently. Impressed nods around the table. The meeting lasted 2 hours, and when it concluded, Carl caught Olivia's arm as she gathered her materials. "You're amazing at this," he said quietly. "I had a good teacher." "No, this is you. Your mind, your instincts, your ability to see what others miss." Carl's hand slid to the small of her back, a possessive gesture that Olivia had come to associate with safety and belonging. "I'm proud of you. Proud that you turned a junior accountant into a criminal. Proud that you chose to become exactly who you were always meant to be. The accountant survived. This?" He gestured to the opulent conference room, to the empire they now ran together. "This is actually living." And the scary thing was, Olivia agreed. That evening, they had dinner at Carl's favorite restaurant, an Italian place in Little Italy that he technically owned, but that operated as a legitimate, high-quality establishment serving the best ossobuco in Manhattan. Over wine and risotto, Carl said something that made Olivia's breath catch. "Marry me." She set down her fork, staring at him. What? Marry me? Carl pulled out a small velvet box. I know it's crazy. I know we've only been together 6 months. But in my world, in my life, I've never been more certain of anything. The ring was stunning. A flawless diamond in a platinum setting that probably cost more than a car. But it was the look in Carl's eyes that made Olivia's decision, not the jewelry. Yes, she said. Just like that? No hesitation. Carl, I crossed about 15 different moral and legal lines to be with you. I learned how to kill people. I helped run a criminal empire. You think I'm going to hesitate about marriage? He laughed, slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her right there in the restaurant as other diners applauded, assuming they were just another happy couple celebrating love. They had no idea they were applauding the union of New York's most powerful crime boss and the woman who'd transformed from victim to equal partner in violence and strategy. The wedding was held 3 months later, a small private ceremony at the penthouse with only Carl's closest people in attendance. No publicity, no photos that could be used against them, just a simple exchange of vows that meant everything precisely because of how private it was. Olivia wore ivory silk. Carl wore a perfectly tailored tuxedo. Vincent served as best man. Sophie cried during the vows. And when the officiant, a judge who owed Carl considerable favors, pronounced them married, Olivia felt a completeness she'd never experienced before. This was her life now, not the one she'd planned, not the one she'd expected, but somehow, impossibly, the one she was meant for. 1 year after that night in Edgar's office, Olivia stood in the penthouse looking out at Manhattan at sunset. So much had changed. She was now Olivia Thomas, wife of Carl Thomas, co-leader of an empire that touched every corner of the city. She wore expensive clothes, carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew her own power, and commanded respect from men who would have dismissed her as irrelevant 18 months ago. She'd killed 3 people, Edgar, the man in the warehouse, and one other who'd threatened Carl during a negotiation gone bad. She'd learned to live with that. Had learned that survival in Carl's world sometimes required violence, and she was willing to pay that price. She'd also saved lives. Had used her position to protect vulnerable people in Carl's organization. Had pushed for policies that minimized collateral damage and unnecessary cruelty. Had proven that power didn't have to mean mindless brutality. Carl came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking about? About how far I've come. About who I used to be. Do you miss her, that Olivia? Sometimes, Olivia admitted. She was innocent in ways I'll never be again. But she was also powerless, afraid, living her life according to other people's rules. She turned in Carl's arms. I don't want to go back to that. Ever. You won't have to. Carl kissed her forehead. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Exactly who you're supposed to be. A criminal, a survivor, a partner, a queen. Carl's smile was fierce and proud. My queen. And standing there in the penthouse fortress, looking out at the city they controlled together, Olivia Jensen Thomas accepted her truth. She'd chosen this life with full knowledge of its costs and dangers. She'd traded innocence for power, safety for influence, conventional morality for survival and agency. And she wouldn't change a single choice. Because for the first time in her life, Olivia wasn't just existing, she was ruling. And that's how a junior accountant became a Mafia queen. If you made it this far without subscribing, I'm genuinely confused about your life choices. Hit that button right now, turn on notifications, And drop a comment telling me what you thought of Olivia's transformation. Also, would you have made the same choices? Would you choose power over safety? Let me know. I'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember that sometimes the person who saves you isn't a hero. They're just someone powerful who decides you matter. Thanks for watching.